to be critical, engaged people, even though we might be then taking that knowledge and focusing on reforming the institution. So I'm just putting out there, as a philosopher, I have to make these kind of categorical distinctions that I think help in dividing up our energy and where we want to devote resources to. And it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't going to get the education I wanted in the institution, but the education that I really wanted came outside the institution. Not that the institution is worthless, but it's literally, its function is not to produce critical, self-reflective, engaged community members. That's not the function, right? So you can focus on other things in the institution reforming it, but we can get that outside. Okay, that's it.
I kind of wanted to talk about more of the faculty struggles. I want to segue sort of into local and immediate. A different kind of corporatization I want to bring awareness to at the K-12 level is it's shocking to the extent to which corporations, lobbies, special interest groups have their hands in K-12 education, and it's trickle down. It goes up to higher ed as well. Just some interesting facts at Cherry Creek Schools. We have a contract with Coca-Cola. We're not allowed to sell any beverages other than Coke products at our schools. In the near future, we might be seeing advertisements on our report cards that go out to our students and their families. We have agreements with Chick-fil-A for activity. They sponsor our activities, Red Robin as well. Romeo and Grill, you guys probably know the social and political implications of having Chick-fil-A. Involved with schools and stuff like that, as well as Romeo and Grill. They're religious-based and owned, I guess you could say. Perhaps you've heard, like in Pennsylvania, Ohio, along the Rust Belt, governors there are opening up public education institutions. The land they're based on. What they've done is cut funding to higher ed, and they will allow in K-12, and they're allowing fracking companies to come in and actually frack on campus. So these are some things. These are some things that corporations have their hands in everything in K-12 and higher ed. For example, you go in our cafeteria, you see dairy, you see drinking milk posters everywhere. The dairy lobbies in there. They control our lunch programs, the meat industry. Monsanto as well. They deal with what our kids eat at school. So that's one aspect of corporatization. But one thing I kind of wanted to talk about, we talked about in other breakout sessions, was a race to the top policy. I'm sure you all are a little bit familiar with race to the top. Obama and Arne Duncan's endeavor to, I would say, privatize public ed. Basically, if schools want to, if states want to opt out of No Child Left Behind, they have to sign on to this race to the top. There are many stipulations in what, in order for states to win the race, we have to meet certain criteria. So I kind of want to go through that really quickly. Some of the criteria that we, as public schools in Colorado, have to meet in order to garner those federal funds. And keep in mind, these are unfunded mandates. So what Colorado did in 2011 was they passed Senate Bill 191, which basically stipulates that all public schools have to give standardized tests. And we talked about that extensively today. But standardized tests, again, are an unfunded mandate. Our school district spends tens of millions each year on the implementation, the proctoring, the grading of these standardized tests. Okay, these are written by Pearson, they're written by ETS, they're written by McGraw-Hill, and yeah.
Who are they? Can you just for those who don't know who Pearson, McGraw-Hill is?
Oh, it's the test writing industry. This is the industry that manufactures and grades these tests. Okay, so it's all tied into. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, just a question.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, weren't they originally textbook companies? Because I remember it found that.
Pearson is right.
And then they became they expanded into the testing industry.
Right. Which I'll get to that in a moment with the Common Core standards, but standardized tests basically, if you're unaware, are implemented statewide. Some charters are not even free of these, but basically they set certain benchmarks for students, and as teachers we have to proctor these standardized tests, and we're trained not to encourage students to to complete the test, not to to take a second look. We cannot coach or encourage students in any way to finish the test. So in other words, there's no buy-in for students to do well. They're not rewarded for anything, but it's a method to gather data. So these data that we collect, each teacher is given a thick packet at the beginning of every year with all of their students' names, and it says in math, science, and English, these students are below proficient, partially proficient, above proficient. So we look at students as, are they proficient or not? And then we with that data, we have to take focus students that they're not aware of this. We collect their writing samples, and we have to collect data on them. So I mean, basically, it's a data-based achievement system. And the one thing about standardized tests is that standardized tests do not accurately measure student achievement. They just measure how well one student can do on a certain day. I mean, there's so many environmental factors that go into how well one student can do on a test. In addition to that, Senate Bill 191 also promotes the concept of merit pay, which pits teacher against teacher. It creates competition within departments. It detracts from collaboration, and this has led to you might have heard stories in the media of how how teachers and principals fudge test scores. They might go and erase their answers and put in the right ones. These are people that have gotten caught. This is a practice that's obviously frowned upon, but when people's salaries are based on this, and school funding is based on these test scores, you can see why this happens sometimes. Also, next year we're going to be transitioning statewide into Common Core standards. And Common Core standards, again, set benchmarks for all students. And this is why we call Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind on steroids, because it's a self-defeating policy, basically. Saying that every student is going to reach this benchmark is just an impossibility, because you have so many socioeconomic factors that go into it, you have racial factors that go into it, the list goes on and on. So what happens if we don't achieve these standards? Teachers are punished, schools are punished, they're not funded, they're closed down, they're privatized. Part of Senate Bill 191 also is teacher tenure reform. Right now, to get tenure, you have a 3-year probationary track. After those 3 years, the school calls it buying a teacher. And so if they deem you, fit or an effective teacher, you'll get tenure status. Well, 191 votes to get rid of that tenure status. If you're deemed ineffective after 2 years, they can let you go. This is a way of them basically getting rid of higher paid teachers, for example. One trend that we've seen in Cherry Creek is that due to the budget cuts, we've seen a salary scale freeze. It's been in teaching. Every 15 credits you get past a degree, you go up on a salary scale. Well, that's frozen. We can no longer do that. So what they're doing, the trend last year was Cherry Creek eliminated 92 to 94 probationary teachers right before they were to acquire tenure status. By doing that, they can bring in newer teachers fresh out of college with no experience, start them at $36,000 a year and freeze their pay, and not have to pay. They can keep on going through teachers this way to satisfy these budget cuts. So that's another struggle that we're facing. And of course, it affects students, because we have less effective teachers, we have teachers that are competing against each other, the list goes on and on. Senate Bill 191 forces us to reevaluate unions' place at the table. Douglas County Schools, for example, just cut their union. They no longer have a seat at the bargaining table, and Douglas County has reverted or have implemented a market-based pay scale. So basically, if you are a fifth grade teacher, fourth grade teacher, third grade teacher, I think it's art, PE, health, you start at $35,000 a year, and then based on standardized test scores, student parent approval, and there are a couple other criteria, of course, administrative evaluations, you can get merit pay. Okay, and some of these, benchmarks for teachers are really difficult to achieve, considering there's no bond for students to do well on standardized tests to begin with. So we have, so as a result, we teach to the test, we lower benchmarks, and we unionize. What else? I wanted to mention. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I wonder, we are already halfway through, unfortunately. But I just wanted to say, if we could just get another, couple minutes of comments, but then I want to open it up to discussion. So I want to cut you off this one. So I think we want to also get to the broader input. So,
Well,
question.
Did 191 make what happened in Douglas County possible? Are you saying like that, like what Douglas County just did by abolishing the union, would that not have happened if we didn't pass 191?
191, no, it could have happened.
Okay, that's-
Senate Bill 191 basically focuses on standardized testing, teacher tenure. It has nothing. I mean, it helps the process along, no doubt about it. Yeah, good question. I really didn't have too much more than that, and I wanted to reiterate that these are grievances, that they're not complaints. However, they're struggles that affect us, but in the end affect the students. And it affects them going into college and all this stuff too. So it's local, it's immediate, and it's very impactful, and it's very scary to the point where we're losing really good teachers. We're not cultivating the best and brightest students that we possibly could, and it's kind of changing. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm interested. Also, I'm grateful to give
Yeah, and we very much appreciate you bringing the K-12 perspective. This is something that we definitely, as college activists, often don't have enough relation to or knowledge of to really be effective in advocating or pushing any kind of agenda in K-12. So we really appreciate you being here, sharing that perspective that we can contrast with the situation in college, because they're obviously related. A lot of the problems that we have in college come out of K-12. So at this point, we want to.
And many get dropped.
Exactly. And so at this point, we would really like to just hear some feedback and additions from the group. What have these comments made you think of? Did you gain some insights? Do you have something to add? Do you want to disagree? I think it's extremely important for students to be able to disagree with faculty and teachers. So I just want to open it up for anyone who's got comments and things that that this discussion has already made you think of. And then toward the end, we're going to definitely want to start talking about what can be done, given these sorts of considerations, these things we've heard. What sorts of actions can we begin to take together, and how can we collaborate and move forward? So just go ahead and raise your hand. I'll just try to keep in order of when people are raising their hands and whoever's going to input. So, what's up? Go ahead.
I have to disagree with what you said. One thing, the rest I agree with.
I'm sorry.
You said that universities they're not supposed to teach you how to be a better person, and they're just you can learn outside the classroom, which I agree that you can learn outside the classroom, but I actually go to an institution that does make me a better person every day, and that the faculty is aligned with that. And then if I ever thought that it wasn't about that, then I can go to someone higher up and have that dialogue. I just want to say, maybe it doesn't happen at Metro.
Can you share where you go?
I go to Regis University. How about we to live off the lake? Like your minor here, we have, that's the biggest major on campus there is peace and justice. So like 50 students who are majoring in it, and then like 30 who are minoring in it. So it's like, I'm just saying that there are institutions in Denver that exist like that. So I want to validate what you said, because I know that applies to a lot of people here. That's want to also say that there are institutions that are really awesome, care about who I am as a person, and if I'm happy, if I'm serving other people well.
Yeah, can I respond to that? Absolutely. I'm at CU Denver. I don't know what it's like.
Sorry.
Definitely. I mean, I'm a professor, and I try to do that in my classroom. I try to do that with the minor. And so, yeah, we try to carve out those spaces, and some institutions, it's built into the mission statement perhaps, and there's more of them. The point that I should have been subtler in my articulation of it, which is that the original impetus for general higher education was kind of vocational training. And whenever there's budgetary pressure put on the institution, usually those elements that are developing us as individuals, as critical, reflective community members, those are the ones to go. Right? Or those are the ones that have to cut back. Because, and you'll see this, like, I know I'm from Wisconsin, and the governor wants to start eliminating programs whose graduates don't get jobs in their field right out of the institution. Right? And so, what does that mean for philosophy? I'm a philosophy professor. Right? With a BA in philosophy, you can't become a professor. You're not going to become a professional anything in philosophy with a BA in philosophy, because it's teaching you critical thinking, logical thinking, history of some intellectual history, et cetera, et cetera. You develop good critiques. It really, you flourish as a person, but you may not get that degree, and therefore, in the state of Wisconsin, it's proposed that you then eliminate philosophy. Right? And that's the logic that I was trying to talk about, but you're absolutely right to say that that's not universal at all. And it happens in every institution where there are critical spaces that.
We have one over here, and then two.
So this is really interesting. I'm an adult returning student after about 16 years. And I dropped out because what was being faced at that juncture in my life when I was in the college community environment, so to speak, I was very disillusioned. So I went out into life, and I had some great mentors, and worked in the legal field, worked in the insurance industry, worked in the entertainment industry, and then even pursued other studies to develop these critical self-reflective skill sets that you do acquire outside of the academic environment. I'm sorry to say, that's just how it is. And because it's not nurtured unless you're pursuing a degree in philosophy and such. So now here I am coming back in through these doorways, and we still have the same social issues that were relevant back in the 80s. Yet now we've got contemporary capitalism that we have to face with the financialization of education. And so where I sit today is, this is really an opportunity to have the three of you here to really look at and dissect, is as this adult returning in to these doorways, what I found is critical for me is to establish a bond in the core with particular professors that I know are on the same page. And as a young student, I started college at 17. I didn't have that wherewithal, okay? So I have that now as an adult. And I need to know, because sitting with the Feminist Alliance and staff with the Institute of Women's Study Services as a triode organization, yeah, let's get to the meat of it. How do we partner together? Because we're facing these same issues, corporatization, and then, in the previous workshop, we were discussing about divesting and then full transparency of endowments, and, that's a very touchy issue when you've got big corporate focus, okay? And the truth of the matter is, I've always been an activist. That's why I walked away from school earlier on, and I was involved in a lot of community organizations at a grassroots level. Am I willing to be human collateral for a movement? Probably not. Am I willing to be a martyr? I don't believe it's necessary. I believe where we are now in the 21st century, we can approach these issues in a very, much more advanced and intelligent way, with more finesse. But we have to partner who do with our veterans. We have to. So I'm here deferring to you to say, shepherd us. Show me the way.
Uh-oh.
You just said not to do
Yeah, schools of thought.
Yeah. So we had 2, then 3, and then 4, and 5. Go ahead.
I was just struck by the comment on JP Morgan. You know how much money they're giving to them?
$5.5.
$5 million. I guess I kind of go with the campaign that we're working on here with the investment campaign for fossil fuels. I know the CU Foundation has about $23 million invested in oil and gas, and that's just a big part of the big, corporate system that's overtaking our schools right now. And to fund the school with the lack of funding with higher ed, and it just makes me angry. So what I'm saying is, how could we be of use with the fossil fuel investment, and hopefully partnering and getting CU Denver to say, hey, this is us. Do you know? Anyone have an answer? I don't want to be that person to partner up with. I'm a student at UCD, so I'm hoping.
Well, we should definitely, my short answer is, I don't have a big answer. But I would love to talk afterwards and we can talk about what's possible.
Do you have a response to that? Or you
I had a related, just a quick one. My daughters work on how farmers in Mexico fight to preserve their corn. And they've made varieties of corn. And Monsanto is now involved in GMO corn. And the president of Mexico looks like, just like Obama with the XL pipeline out there. And now that area figured to tell them it's going to be planted with GMO corn. And then Monsanto's going to sue all the farmers for having the other stuff. And she just wrote a blog piece, I'm going to put up tomorrow, which says, climate change is likely to put our business to our corn. As far as it goes, U.S. agriculture in California in 2040 should Secretary of Energy. So this point about Monsanto and the schools is something we will partner up on in the same way. That is to say, I think really trying to think about really major attacks that threaten climate and threaten food. Likely to be something that probably a lot of people do not think of themselves immediately exactly as
Question topics I'd like to bring up. The first one is something I haven't heard as many people address, and it might be because it's so recent, we still don't have enough information on it. Online education seems to be this new popular sort of phenomenon that's taking place across a lot of schools, both K-12 and especially the for-profit places like ITP Canton Drive, University of Phoenix, and even the traditional places that are the four-year institutions. I do not know how successful it's going to be, and I feel as if at least the climate of what people think about it in LA that I hear is that it's still not taken seriously yet, but for all I know, that might be just dismissing online education as a threat that isn't really dangerous enough to consider. But it seems like the next logical step in ways to make the teaching profession, where you need an actual human being, teacher, obsolete. And that leads me into my second question topic about, I guess, coming up with a new idea or maybe evolving current one regarding teachers' unions, the damage done to a lot of these unions with the busing or the infighting between unions and within unions, because a lot of top-down leadership with unions like UTLA or some other places, and the rank and file members feeling disenfranchised from their representatives tells me that the traditional structure of a union is no longer enough. I'm not saying we can't use unions anymore, but maybe we need to be creative and think of an alternative new modern union, which is why I wanted to ask if either of you could talk about how to do a teaching. We might, yeah, because I've never been in one, I've never seen one, I've heard of a few, but they sound like they're also very difficult to pull off, of course, but also rare. And a teach-in is kind of like a live union sit-down in action in the literal sense, because a traditional teachers union definitely is not an open space for students, even if, say, like I did for a brief while, we were trying to intern for one. And also, it replicates that hierarchical structure that a corporation a lot of times has in its leadership. So I thought a teach-in is the best way to kind of overcome that inherent flaw in organizational structure without eliminating the faculty getting organized. But I know nothing about how you do teaching. How do you do that?
Spouses,
I think I'm thinking of something different when you say teaching. So I think because a teaching is kind of outside the institution, but we're doing like a workshop, can be discussion-based, but it's somehow facilitated.
Oh, right. I meant a long-standing teach-in project. A teach-in, from the cases I've heard, is a single incident or event in which a teach-in occurred. But is there a past sort of ongoing teach-in in which you're kind of, in a way, disoccupying the school by getting out of the school without removing your influence from it? Because you take the people of the school someplace else and you're mobilizing them at the same time. That sounds really hard and risky to pull off.
So you can just the dream schools, like the smaller schools, like that's sort of like, 'cause it sounds like you're talking about like an alternative institution. So it's like ongoing and it's like it's going to continue.
I guess, but it's not gonna be an institution, that's the thing. It's like the people who were part of the same class even, or the same school, physically speaking, they just, instead of showing up to the school, they instead show up off campus someplace else. But in a way that might be similar to an ongoing walkout. But they're consciously, actively no longer entering that school and validating that school with their physical presence. But they retain that common identity of having belonged to that school. And I feel like that happened up in the Bay Area